That's a good one. Welcome back to Your Content Factory. My name is Blake. We are in the Blueform Media garage right now. If you guys can check it out here, we got a couple camera angles up right now. Mal's on the controls again, and today we're going to be talking about something unique. You know, I've been on the intro smoking a cigar. I've never done it on the YCF show yet, so here we are. But today we brought you into the garage for a reason, because we want to talk about hobby podcasting, right? These little niche little hobbies that you can do to really showcase or to just dive deep into a specific topic that will actually grow an audience pretty quick. So that's what we're here to talk about today. That's why I'm smoking a cigar, because it's a hobby of mine. So, with everything said so far, hobby podcasting, right? This is where you need to be. This is a good place to be. So, as you can see in this garage behind me, I've got a lot of hobbies here on the wall behind me. I've got a lot of hobbies back here in the background too. This is a kind of a one-size-fits-all room. This is my bat cave, if you will. This is where I gear up to go have fun at the shooting range or whatever I'm doing. And then this is where I attempt to stay in shape as best I can, as best I know how. So I've got the custom gym over here, custom shooting setup, and then the workbenches along here and some other things. But we also are launching a new podcast called Authentic Identity. Me and my friend Jared Everett will be launching that here in the next couple weeks. So you guys are getting a preview of the set. This is the only place that we record Authentic Identity. It's the newest addition to Blueform Studios, is where we can actually come in here and record. We have a mobile setup now. So you're going to be seeing a lot more backgrounds and backdrops to the podcasts that we do, even for our clients if you follow some of them. So welcome to the Blueform Media garage. This is where my hobbies live. So we thought it would be pertinent to do a hobby podcast here. So as for cigars, I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite hobbies recently is cigars. Right here, this is My Father. This is the brand of cigar, My Father, and I'm smoking a Fonseca right now. Really good smoke. Very, very mellow tobacco. So those of you who don't know much about cigars, you're going to get a crash course right now. Basically, cigar, you can dip your toes into the pool of cigars. You can stay in the kiddie pool, or you can dive as deep as you want. The world of cigars is huge. So a lot of people don't know. You saw me at the beginning of the episode here lighting up a cigar. There's a whole art form to that we'll discuss. But cigars are fantastic. They're the purest form of tobacco out there, other than like pipe tobacco, if you get your tobacco sourced well. But the purest form of tobacco you can get is usually a premium cigar. And that premium cigar, they can range from anywhere from like $12 to like, 30 plus usually on the normal side of things. Or you can get up to like the thousands of dollars, depending on what kind of cigar it is, how long it's been aged, if it's a Cuban, blah, 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 blah. So we won't dive that deep into it. But the reason we're talking about my hobby is because of the depth of conversation that you can have around a hobby or an item or whatever. So we met a guy the other day who's done 500 podcast episodes, right, Mal, about Jeeping, just about the intricacies of doing off-roading in Jeeps and just Jeep in general. It's just all things Jeep. It was like Missy Elliott in here. It's like, beep, beep, who's got the keys to the Jeep? So interesting stuff. So you can really dive deep on a hobby podcast, and you can really corner like a niche audience. And I think you'll have more success as a podcaster if you start off with a hobby. Number one, if it's your hobby, you're going to be a lot more passionate about that topic. You're going to be a lot more knowledgeable. The example I like to use is if you're at like a dinner party and you don't really know anybody there, and it's kind of stale, maybe not your crowd. You're just like, I don't know these people. And then you see somebody wearing, I don't know, a certain brand of clothing, or you see someone wearing a high-end watch. That's another hobby thing. We know some people that buy some very, very expensive watches, and it's kind of an indicator to someone else that you have a taste in that area, right? It's something like that. So it really kind of brings people together when you share a hobby. Sometimes that's the first thing you have in common with a person is the hobby. So it's really whatever you're passionate about. We always encourage people to start a podcast doing that, even if it's super niche. Just do something where you're passionate about it, because then that passion will come through, and you'll be able to build a community and an audience around that passion. So that's why I started this episode with a cigar. That's why you see it in the intro. I've come to love cigars over the last year and a half or so. Well, about a year actually, almost a year. So I'm kind of a new smoker in that regard, but I dove deep really early on into the hobby. So I'm going to nurse this a little bit. So a little bit about my hobby here that we're showcasing, cigars. This is a Nicaraguan cigar made by the brand My Father. So a lot of people don't know, Cuban cigars are kind of the OG. Like the purists believe in only Cuban cigars. A lot of people think they're the best. A lot of people, it's debatable now, but back, 20, 30 years ago, it was like Cubans or die. John F. Kennedy knew this too when they did an embargo on all like Cuban cigars. They like stopped that, but he himself bought about 1,000 cigars before he axed that or put that law into effect, I guess. So he kind of dipped his toes in there and into the cookie jar. But anyway, so Cubans are kind of like the staple of a good cigar, but now Nicaraguan, or what they call New World cigars, are all the rage. They've caught up to them in quality and consistency, and just the amount of blends that you can do from one tobacco plant or a multiple leaves is just astounding. And so once you get into it, it's kind of like fine wines or scotch or whiskey. There's so many different flavors and blends and brands to enjoy. And so I've been really liking this My Father brand. I think they were originally in Cuba, but they left in the 60s when Castro was taken over. A lot of cigar companies did, cigar families that had been there for generations. They left and they started growing tobacco in Nicaragua and other places as well. So it's kind of an interesting history around cigars. But this is a New World cigar, and it's the purest form of tobacco out there. If you're familiar with any of these health podcasts like Huberman Labs, if you know Andrew Huberman, very, very intelligent guy, very, very, very smart. I think he studied at some Ivy League school. I can't remember. He's a professor there currently. Someone can correct me. I'm not too keen on those details, but he talks about the effects of nicotine and how positive it is for the brain. And nicotine is not near as addictive as people, chalk it up to be, or how we've been told by these marketeering pros. So the nicotine is great. It's a mental stimulant, basically. It's just really good for the mind. It's good for like blood flow and other things like that. And it also boosts your testosterone. And so a cigarette, though, is completely opposite. This is far, far, far from a cigarette. A lot of people think it's worse, and it's not. So a cigar, you only puff into your mouth. Some people they say they can bring it down, deeper into the esophagus and then inhale it out. You can do what's called a retrohale, where you breathe in and blow it out your nose. So you get more flavor kind of in your nasal passage, and you can just enjoy the flavor better, some people think. So I might have to relight this. I've been talking too much. So what's cool about a cigar too is that it's all natural tobacco. So it will go out. There's no additives or, things that we would deem carcinogens, kind of like in cigarettes, where a cigarette as soon as you light a cigarette, it will burn out because all the chemicals in there. But a cigar, you might have to relight if you talk too much like me. I've never done a solo podcast with a cigar because usually it can bounce the conversation over to somebody. So I might do that to Mal a little bit today, put her on the spot. But yeah, I have to relight this cigar because it's gone out, because the tobacco. Yeah, the tobacco is so pure. It's also humid. So I keep these in a humidifier so they keep. So it's a little bit soft to the touch. It's got some humidity to it, and that's the best way the tobacco burns. So there's a whole science to how to keep these fresh. It's only smoke them when you're fresh. If you have a cigar that's crumbling in your mouth or like falling apart or coming unraveled, that's usually an indicator that, that it's too dry, stuff like that. But I've really come to enjoy these, and I've seen some health benefits, with all things in moderation, of course, like don't go overboard, but smoke one or two a week, maybe at max. Sometimes more, depending on if I'm at social situations with people, because it's really fun to just enjoy a hobby together with people like that. But the way you cut a cigar, the way you smoke a cigar, the etiquette surrounding it, it's kind of like a higher class hobby, right? It's a finer tobacco or a finer thing, kind of like pipe smoking, very similar. But there's a whole community around this. So this is a great topic to launch podcasts around, is this hobby. If you know a lot, if you're passionate about it, or if you want to learn more about it, dive into something that you already know. Same thing with the stuff behind me, firearms and everything. Some of those areas are a little saturated, but you'll still get people that are just chomping at the bit to dive deeper into the hobby with you. And a podcast is an awesome way, because if I can't stop thinking about cigars and I have an hour or 2 hour drive ahead of me, I'm going to throw a podcast on about cigars. If I find one, if it comes across me, I'm like, hey, that's interesting. I'm going to dive into that. So people will allocate the time to hear and learn more about their hobbies so they can further enjoy that hobby as well. So hobby podcasts, that's what we're talking about today. As you can see, I'm not inhaling this smoke. I'm just puffing on it. Just puffing. Puffing away. What are some other things, Mal, that you think are interesting about cigars? You've heard me talk about them a lot.
I mean, you've already talked about it, but I didn't know that you didn't inhale a cigar.
Yeah.
That was something I learned. They're like, no, you just let it kind of envelop your mouth for a bit, and then you blow it out. And I was like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah, you basically just smoke it for the taste.
I didn't do drugs growing up, so I don't know shit. But yeah, I thought that was fascinating. Other than that, I really like when you show people like a rose cut.
Yeah.
People are like, oh shit.
Yeah, there's a certain way to cut this. I've cut mine as a V cut. You can kind of see that. Is that in focus there?
No.
No? How about now?
That's better.
I'm like shaking today. Have you noticed that on camera? Is it noticeable? I feel like I'm shaking. I haven't eaten my daily steak yet. That's another thing.
He's operating off of caffeine solely.
Caffeine and nicotine today. So, but the reason I like cigars a lot is they're fully handmade. So it takes about 500 steps and a number of years for this premium cigar to get in your hands and to be hand rolled and handmade. It consists of filler on the inside. That's the flavor. So they select certain parts of the leaf, certain leaf that's been kind of like marinated. So like in a coffee, or sometimes they do a brandy or a whiskey, or there's so many variations. So some of them, the top of a tobacco plant will taste different than the middle and the bottom. So these leaves are combined, and there's like these, cigar scientists out there that are just trying all these new flavors. And so that's what these New World cigars have kind of brought to the table, is they've matched the quality of Cubans, and to grow the market, anytime there's a free market, it will always like breed and like foster innovation. And so that's what's been happening in the cigar world. And being in the States, if you're watching this in the United States, you have like the widest selection of cigars available to you anywhere on the planet, because it's like one of the biggest markets for tobacco. So it's very fun, awesome thing to get into. And I like it because it is handmade still, and there's not very much regulation on it unless you live in the state of Utah. You have to buy these from a tobacco vendor. You can't have them shipped to your house because Utah doesn't fucking trust you. Utah doesn't trust you. You can't make your own decisions in Utah.
But get them oxys, baby.
But yeah, you can go. Yeah, you can't have cigars shipped to your house in Utah, but they will prescribe you mountains of Oxycontin and hydrocodone and anything you want. Any type of opioid you want in the state of Utah, you can have a doctor give it to you if you go give them some reasons. I think we're like the #1 addicted state to opioids, or we were for like 10 years running. I think we still hold the title, but I could be wrong. So it's interesting, but so if you want cigars, you got to go to a cigar shop, and they're kind of sometimes limited selection, sometimes not, depending on where you are. And sometimes they'll place an order for you. So if you want some specialty cigars, you can get those ordered, or just go out of state. Also, for the record, if you go anywhere where they sell Cubans, so I've bought authentic Cubans in Mexico and Belize, you can bring back 10 sticks, so 10 cigars per person. So if you want to go ham and cheese and buy, go on a family vacation and make sure your whole family packs 10 cigars back for you that are Cubans, that's the way you can get around like the embargo. Otherwise, you can't really order Cubans in the United States, from what I understand. I might be wrong on that, but I'm new. I'm new to the hobby, so it's a lot of fun. But they really do make me slow down, and the way I get to it's a ritual, right? I get to nurse the cigar, I get to take care of the cigar prior in the humidor, feed that humidor what it needs to keep these nice and fresh. And then the way you cut it, the way you light it, if you saw that at the beginning, it's all part of the ritual. So why is Blake going on a rant about cigars? Well, again, we told you we're talking about hobby podcasts. Also, me and my friend Jared are going to be starting a cigar club attached to the podcast we started here in this garage. So we thought, hey, garage hobbies, that's where a lot of hobbies live. If you're a woodworker, if you're a mechanic, if you're doing stuff in the garage, even if you're just getting away from the missus, just slamming a cold beer in the garage, listening to the game on the radio, you know the type, right? The garage is where a lot of magic happens. I think that's where Weezer, the band, they got formed in the garage. They have a whole song about it. In the garage, I feel safe. They got posters on the wall, their favorite rock group, Kiss, all that stuff, So this is our garage studio and hobby podcasting. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, if you're like me, I mentioned this last episode, I can kind of see into the future, not like a wizard or anything, but I can kind of anticipate if there's an idea we should start a podcast about accounting or financing. And I'm like, yeah, oh, no way. I'd already know that's not up my alley. I have no passion for that. I know nothing about it in the first place. And so that would be a lot of work for me to sit down and pour passion into something that doesn't exist. It's just fake. And so a lot of people fizzle out because they're trying to do something that's not in line with them. And that's been the theme the last couple episodes, right? And I'm going to switch camera angles over here. But if you want to start a podcast, keep it as simple as possible and do it about something that you absolutely love. I look forward to lighting up a cigar and enjoying the ritual and just having my thoughts to myself, or enjoying a conversation with a good friend. I have a friend from Texas. Shout out to Sean, who came and visited me. We've been gaming on the internet together for 3 years plus, and we'd never met in person. And he was on a road trip, and he came here, and we got to sit down and enjoy a cigar together. After just being cyber friends forever, which is cool. And a lot of veterans I do that with. Just game. That's another hobby too. I might dive into as well. It's just video gaming. But I don't do it to, I do it to kind of decompress, but I also do it to maintain a social life with a lot of veterans. Some of them I served with and some of them I just met, but to have some social circles outside of the U.S. And I think you've heard me talk about it. We've talked about it on other podcasts, Mal, but that hobby of video gaming, I started streaming on twitch.com, if you're familiar with that, but that hobby led to this business.
Yeah, we've talked about it on this.
Yeah, we've talked about it on here. But that group of gamers, we've created a community space together, and we got all sorts of people in there enjoying a hobby, right? So you'll be surprised how quickly you can build a community around a hobby podcast. And that's why, like, I can't remember his name, but he does Beast Off-Road or Beast UTV. Chance. Yeah, I want to say Chad, but Chance, I just think he looks like a beast. So I was like, he's just Beast UTV to me. Like, who's Chance? I don't know. It's just Beast UTV because the dude looks like a killer.
Yeah, Chance
Olige. That's such a cool name, dude. That's like main character level. So I think he should do a podcast around his off-roading because he already has a community built for off-road vehicles called Beast UTV. And it's cool. His content is awesome. Southern Utah is a great place for people to go and do that hobby. And so he's built a really good community around it, you know, so it's fantastic to see. So that's the type of person, Chance, if you're watching, you should definitely start a podcast. Come see us. We'll get you started. We'll talk about it. But you should just get one off the ground. You'd be blown away at how quick your community latches onto something like that. So keep that in mind. But a lot of people, podcasting is a lot of work, even if you're a podcast host. Like we talked about last episode, there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of articulation. There's a lot of stuff that a podcast host needs. And sometimes people don't have that unless they're talking about something they're super passionate about. All of a sudden, they turn into like a presenter. Like, have you ever been talking to somebody you can't quite connect with, and then you both find out that you love Star Wars, and they light up? You can actually see the passion, like, light ablaze within them, and they're like, whoa, and then they start talking, like, yo, what'd you think about Revenge of the Sith and all this stuff, and like, how many moons does Kashyyyk have, where, you know, Kashyyyk is where the Wookiees are from, if you didn't know. It's like, how many moons does Kashyyyk have? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, trick question. There are no moons. Kashyyyk is a moon of a bigger planet. And then you're like, whoa, I didn't know that. So then you're diving down the Star Wars nerd train, and you're going full speed, full steam ahead on the Star Wars nerd train, just because you have a shared passion about it. And by the way, I've dove way too deep into Star Wars, and now Disney ruined it. Fuck you, Disney. That goddamn mouse. That's another thing too. Hobbies it's wide. Like, a hobby could be anything, right? I know friends that they just like to run up and down mountains all day and they think it's awesome. Yeah, people, Mal included. People that hunt, people that do anything. They're super passionate about those things. And what I hate the most when we discuss hobbies is that people shit on other people's hobbies. It's like, if you don't understand why someone likes it, that's fine. But, like, I'm sure there are some hobbies that are better than others, or more healthy, or like more rewarding. But that's not for us to say. It's for the person doing the hobby to enjoy. As long as your hobby's not hurting other people, you know, or doing weird shit in the community, or, you know, there's some lines we could draw. As long as do your hobbies, do what you love. And do it like with a passion, and do it with a big middle finger up like this. Like, even if you're knitting an intricate blanket for your local for your local congregation, or if you're Mormon, your ward relief society program, and like, you're going overboard on the knitting, and Sharon and Clarice over here are fucking up the stitching. Like, be passionate about that. Go correct them and be like, yo, this is my hobby. Sisters, I love you in Jesus' name. You know, or whatever. Be nice, but like, have a fuck you attitude about your hobbies. Make time to do them. You know, I would say don't let your hobbies get out of control, but you can go make a living on your hobby now. People are leaving the workspace to go do their hobbies. Went out again. I talk too much. I nursed it back.
He got it.
Oh, this cigar does taste really good, though.
Yeah, anybody can make money doing anything. I think the perfect example is OnlyFans. So.
Yeah, that's probably the worst perfect example.
The worst perfect
but it's still
example.
a perfect example.
You can make money doing anything.
Yeah, feet finder.
Yeah.
Like that's also like a fetish. Like I guess like in the hobby spectrum, you have like normal hobbies. There's not even like it's just normal hobbies, and then there's like fetishes. Fetishism. And so a lot of people are making money off of other people's fetishes. And that's where there's a gray area, because there's a lot of sickos out there that are doing weird stuff. So, more power to them if it's not hurting anybody, or if it's not, breaking laws, right? We could dive into that. That would be a dark domain that I don't want to go down on this podcast. So, but yeah, like OnlyFans is like the worst perfect example of that, because other people, they have a fetish or something to lust after. Like, you can make a whole community around your titties if you wanted. But that's doable. So yeah, we're crossing some weird lines here, but be careful of your hobbies. Your hobbies can make you money. Your hobbies can also destroy your life, depending on what they are. And then sometimes hobbies, like, they can lead to an addiction too, if you're using it incorrectly. So that's why I like these finer things in life. I like finer scotches and whiskeys. I like cigars, because the less I do them, the better they are. It's like, that saying that everything should be done in moderation. And that's kind of a blanket term, but I don't think everyone should do cocaine or heroin in moderation. I think you probably should stay away from those things. But, do your hobby in moderation. But if it's something that you can build a solid community around it, you might be able to turn a profit on that, or at least make consistent content around it without feeling like it's work, without feeling like you're dragging your feet, or like, it kills my passion. And you might feel that too, because the key to podcasting is understanding the entire workflow that you need to do. Once this camera stops rolling and this mic shuts down, that's when the real work around the podcast starts. Sorry, I got to keep that alive. And you'll notice too, I'm starting to get a little bit of ash. I'm also burning a little bit crooked because I've been talking too much and holding it. You're supposed to rotate your cigar slowly as you smoke it. So what I'm going to do, if I got a crooked burn like that, I'm just going to take a lighter and even it out on that side. It helps relight it as well. So that kind of evens it out. Just using that flame to, like, as a blade almost. Oh, that should be good. Yeah. Because you want an even burn, so you're getting the flavors in the way that the crafter of this cigar intended, the way the leaf is organized. There's also 3 sections to a cigar. You got the front, the middle, and then the back section that give you different flavor profiles as the tobacco heats up and you start burning into a different leaf or something. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of combinations you can do with cigars. This has just turned into me smoking in front of a camera. I like it. Kind of slows down the pace. Usually I'm just blabbing all the time, so you can kind of see why I like this, how it slows me or forces me to slow down. But yeah, hobby podcasting is huge. I just enjoy talking as well. That talking is a hobby. I like speech. I like communication, and I like the study of language as well. A lot of people don't know, but I'm proficient with reading and writing in German. Hallo, guten Tag, jawohl, ich kann Deutsch, blah, 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 blah. We'll do that another time, but I don't think we have any German listeners, really. So, good times. But yeah, there's a lot of hobbies you could dive into. So that would be our recommendation. And to finish that thought I said earlier, if you're putting work into a podcast, the real work begins after this is recorded. Once the camera's shut down, everything's good. That's when the work begins. That's when you got to know how to edit. There's a lot of tedium to it. Mastering the audio, making sure it sounds good, making sure it gets distributed correctly, putting it up on YouTube, putting it up, whatever platforms you're choosing. And the more platforms you add, the more exposure you'll get, but the more work you create for yourself. So if you have the funds, if you have the means to do it, having a team around you always helps, because if they can take that burden off of you, and you can stay in your creative passion for your hobby or for the podcast that you're doing, That's probably the best way to maintain longevity in that podcast. Because a podcast is something I said it on another podcast, but it's something that you don't just start and do. Like, you don't do 4 podcasts and make it big. You have to do this for a lifetime. Like Joe Rogan's the best example. He's been doing it long. Same with like radio, like Glenn Beck or, some of the Young Turks, if you listen to them, if you're more, liberal minded. They're constantly making content. They're constantly on camera, but they have these teams around them to make it realistic, because you can't do that massive amount of content without some help. And I mean, you can, but you're going to get burnout. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss stuff. You're going to forget about a couple things. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort. So having a team is hugely crucial if you want to make your podcast go to the top, or you want to get your message out or build a brand. This is the same stuff we say every episode. So we're kind of like beating a dead horse at this moment. But another tool you can use is the hobbies that you have. Start something around that. You're going to see a lot more hobby content from me coming up, because I got a lot of knowledge about these from my military service and some contracting service I did, or job rather. It wasn't really service, but there's a lot of stuff to do. And then I'm doing kind of a fitness journey. So over here to my right, all this fitness stuff here, I'm down like 30 pounds, thanks to the carnivore diet, thanks to some good influential people here at the Solid podcast. I got to shout Jeff and Brandon out again, but those guys have given me a ton of knowledge, and their enthusiasm for their hobbies, right? Hunting and being in shape and being successful. Those are all hobbies and lifestyles. And they impart that knowledge to us in the form of a podcast. And you can tell that they're authentic about it, because they live it and they're passionate about that. And I would say it falls in line with that hobby passion, right? It's something that they do. It's their way of life. And that's sometimes how a hobby is. This is a way of life. If there's a whole culture to these cigars, there's a whole culture to the firearm industry, and some of it's a bunch full of wackos, and some of it's really experienced, very, very, very smart people. Same thing with music and guitars. You could have a whole podcast just around guitars and how they make them and how they play them and how they sound, and different woods and different pickups for electric guitars and different everything. So if you're struggling to find something to podcast about, just what are your hobbies? What do you find interesting? What are you really, really good at? And do that into a microphone. Like me, I'm really good at smoking cigars. Watch. So I'm doing that into a microphone right now. I don't know any cigar smokers that could do that shit. Top notch. So here's another trick too. So as you get going with a cigar, you'll get this ash. That ash is crucial. It protects the cherry, which is the part of the tobacco that's remaining lit. It's burning. That cherry, if it's lit correctly, gives you the best flavor throughout. And so a lot of people like a cigarette, they mash that out, or they flick it off, or that will disturb the tobacco. These are fragile creatures. So what you do when you get about an inch or a half inch or so, you just basically want to get rid of that ash.
Hold it up more.
Oh, hold it more? Cool. Am I good?
Right there.
Right here?
Yep.
Hi. I feel like I'm holding up like a dish from Martha Stewart. So you take that ash and you just kind of roll it along the side of the ashtray, just kind of clean that edge. And that's it. Now she's ready to go again. And then you burn another inch or so and do the same. But thank you. If you just mash it down, it starts to stink up the place, because there's an etiquette to cigars. If you're smoking cigars with people in a confined space or in a cigar lounge, there's etiquette. It's like the golf course. You don't just go up to someone else's ball and schwack it into the weeds for them. They'll probably do that themselves, depending on who they are. So there's an etiquette to it, and that's how you roll the ash off your cigar, and it's good to smoke. So keeps it pleasant for everybody else. And you never have to push out a cigar. You don't have to mash it out so it doesn't burn. That's only for cigarettes, because of all the chemicals in there, because of all the carcinogens, because of all the stuff that they put in there to make it even more addictive. So you go buy their shit. It'll just burn. You light a cigarette, it's done. It will burn itself out no matter what. If you flick it on the gas like an action hero, or you flick it in the street, flicking in the bushes, that's where it will start a fire. A cigar, I mean, it still potentially could start a fire, but it will burn out within a few minutes because it's natural tobacco. There's nothing added here. The only thing they add to a cigar, a premium cigar, there's definitely some like horrible ones like Swishers or cigarellos and stuff like that. But yeah, the only thing they add is like a little bit of it's like a little bit of a paste on the end just to cap the thing. So they just dab their finger in it, put a little bit of like a paste that glues the end on there. But it's like a natural reoccurring oil. I can't remember what it's made out of, or it's like a vegetable paste. So you're not getting any weird glue or anything. It's not like Elmer's glue. Sorry if you smelled Elmer's glue as a kid. They don't glue the cigar with Elmer's glue. So if you're hoping to get high off of Elmer's glue, not gonna happen. Yeah, that's how they seal that cigar up so it remains smokable. Yeah, there's nothing unnatural in here. It's all good. If you get something flavored, like you'll get like I don't know, like I've never seen one, but you'll get like a mint or like a raspberry. Those are the ones you want to stay away from because they usually have a lot of additives to it to make that flavor good. If it's a flavor throughout, sometimes even a premium cigar, they'll put a little bit of flavor on the outside, just a little sweet sugar coating. So when you light it up, you get a little bit of sugar on your lip and it kind of like gets a savory, sweet flavor. Kind of nice. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if I buy a premium cigar and it has it, I'm like, hey, cool. That's great. But I'm not looking for flavored cigars. Also, if you do end up getting a flavored cigar, don't put it with other cigars that are not flavored because they'll start absorbing that. It'll just ruin everything in a humidified space, whether you use a humidifying jar or like an actual humidor or just a paper bag or a plastic bag with like a humidity pouch in there. Don't put flavored cigars with premium cigars. See how much I'm covering here? Like some of these I could go into full detail on, and it's just me talking about something I love. So this whole podcast is just an example right now of how you should hobby podcast. It's just simple. I'm talking about this because it's stuff that I've immersed myself into greatly to enjoy, and it's a good source of topics. Plus, you look cool. You know, you look cool like all the top G's out there. What kind of other podcasts would interest you, Mal, from your hobbies? A dog podcast?
Blitz has something to say about that.
Yeah.
Someone might be here, by the way. You know me. Anything music podcasts, I'm like all over. So there's a podcast called Song Exploder, and he gets with the band and they tear apart a specific song about how it was produced. And
Song Exploder.
Song Exploder. I have one of their shirts. It's really good. Yeah, anything music production.
That's up your alley.
I'm all about.
Yeah, there's so much intricacies, like everything. Every profession has so many details in it.
Yeah, talk to like an accountant. Mm-hmm. Like the most monotonous thing ever, and they can just go off. If they're knowledgeable and they love it, like they'll let you know, man.
Yeah, they just go off like our dogs when they see somebody outside.
Yeah.
They're just going off.
Going off.
Yeah. So that's the one downside to this garage studio set is that if you're smoking in here, which I am, obviously, we're going to have to get some airflow in here or something, but we have to open the garage a crack and we open the side door to get the air ventilation in here. But you can just hear everything that's happening in the neighborhood. I think we were recording with Jared and it was like, someone was like weed whacking their shit over there. So it just goes with the organic recording of these podcasts. But yeah, that's a huge component to maintaining your longevity as a podcaster is being passionate about what you do. Hobbies are an easy way to do that. It's an easy way to get a big following because a lot of people share interests. They're nerds about it. If you think about it, a lot of hobbies are meant for us to escape the reality that we're in, which I don't think is super healthy. So if you're using a hobby as an escape, check yourself. Okay. Use a hobby as an enhancement to your life. Currently, I love our life. I get to wake up and we just get to edit at home. I'm here working with my wife in studios that we've built. We get to nerd out on audio and video and editing like this. So this is right up our alley. We've created this dream job for ourselves. And so every hobby we do outside of this is meant to just enhance our life, because we're pushing towards those things. So a lot of people use hobbies, though, to escape. You know, people looking forward to the weekend or looking forward to just escaping by drinking and going to the bar, going to the club. None of those things are wrong or bad, but it's how you use them. Are you trying to escape your reality? Are you trying to escape your 9 to 5? If you're sitting at work and you're just, I want to be home so I can do XYZ all the time, and I got a 9 to 5. Like, you guys have the ability to go shape and create your life however you want. And if you want to dive into a hobby and make money off that hobby, there are so many ways to do that now. And it takes a ton of work, a ton of effort, but there's never been a better time in the history of at least known human history to do that than right now. Take the plunge, get in front of a camera, get your hobbies out, do whatever. Just put yourself out there and start loving your life instead of, getting pulled away by a job when your real life could be right now, right here. It's fantastic. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, see, that's about all I have to say about that now. Anyway, this has just been a relaxed podcast. I hope you've enjoyed. I'm sorry for the mouth noise that's been happening as I smoke this, but I hope you've enjoyed that ASMR, if that's what you're into. That's another hobby. But we're just going to keep pumping out content, helping your content factory flow as smooth as possible. So find your passion, find your voice. Like last episode, we talked about getting articulate, becoming interesting, and being a good podcast host. Part of that is, guiding the topic or being passionate about the topics that you're discussing, being knowledgeable as well. And so go dive into some hobbies, and we'll see you on the next episode of Your Content Factory. My name's Blake. With me, as always, is Mallory on the controls. And I hope you check out some podcasts coming here in this new studio that we got in the garage. This is the podcast. This is the podcast garage. So get out there, and also hit me up if you want to smoke cigars. See you later.